Yeah, so my name is Tony. I'm a student at Oakland University. I'm majoring in Spanish, and I'm going to be introducing Jeremy, who is the a coordinator of leadership and service programs of the OSI.
And I think Shanice is out there. If not, I can introduce our next speaker as well, which is Emily, who's our graduate assistant, and we'll formally introduce ourselves. So Tony, really the whole reason is I just want everybody to see Tony because he's a fantastic individual and one of my favorite people on campus. All right,
He
so
always has cool backgrounds. I mean, look at that. He always has cool Zoom backgrounds.
right, so your next presenters are Emily and I, as I attempt to get this ready. And so today so Daryl provided a wonderful foundation for kind of where we're taking this presentation and where we're taking this conference from this point. So you're able to hear from our panel. So from Kayla, from Emily, and from Kelly, they provided a great insight of their experience and their advice of how to be leaders and how to cultivate ourselves as leaders. Daryl talked about understanding your purpose and understanding your values and how that can help launch us forward. And what Emily and I are going to talk about is a little bit of a different way to look at it. Leaders are only as successful as the people around them. So one of the most critically important things is to focus on building deeper relationships with the people that we're working with. And part of that comes from understanding our blind spots and understanding the importance of feedback. So that's like the premise of our next 25 to 30 minutes that we're going to spend together. But so this is me. I know a lot of the people on the call, and I'm super excited to see you, but I'm also thrilled to see that there's a lot of names that I haven't had the opportunity to meet. So my name is Jeremy Heinlein, and I serve as the coordinator for leadership and service programs, as Tony said. I'm a double alum of CMU. So I did my undergrad in integrative public relations, and I did my master's in communications, specifically looking at eliminating stigmas and stereotypes by having dialogue across difference. And if you want to follow along with some of the other leadership resources that I have, I encourage you to follow my professional Instagram account, which is the Leadership Coach. I'll share other tips and tricks. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, there you go. And then I would be doing a disservice if I did not recognize the other people that are in my actual room that I'm in right now. So this is my work from home staff. We have Rossi, who is a half Beagle, half Dalmatian. She's a rescue. She's also 18 years old. We have Kadabra. That's what she looked like at the beginning of the pandemic when I made this slide. She's now a full grown cat. And then we have Greg, who is, like I said, he's a star. He likes the camera and he's always around, whether you know it or not. So that's my staff. And then I have the privilege of also introducing my human coworker that I love working with, and that's Emily.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily. I told you I'd introduce myself a little more later, so here I am delivering on that promise. I'm the graduate assistant in the leadership and service programs, and I'm an Albion College alum, so I did not go to Oakland for my undergrad, but I'm currently here for my master's in business administration, and I got my undergrad degree in general business and communications. I'm also a really big basketball fan. I was really happy when Daryl kept using basketball examples. That really made me smile. So I played 4 years at Albion, scored 1,000 points, had a fun time. So if you ever have anything basketball to talk about, I'm your gal. And then I also, not unfortunately, I'm in the office, but the only bad thing about it is that my dogs aren't here. I'm a little extra lonely today without the distractions. So there's Junior on the left. They're both poodle mixes. Junior is a rescue and he's not blind, but he looks blind, but he is deaf. But he's a sweetheart. And then there's Maisie on the right. She is a poodle mix as well. And she's I think that she's 9 now. So they're both pretty old, but they're my work at home coworkers.
And so before we get started, I just want to acknowledge the fact, so this conference is 3 hours long, and we've been kind of hitting all of our marks perfectly of transitioning from session to session. So we haven't really had a chance to do breaks. But if you need to go grab a snack, go grab a snack. I've already snuck to the kitchen a couple times to grab some cashews. So if we need to refuel to make sure that we're enjoying the conference at its best, please feel free to do so. You know, like I keep on saying, we're all working from home. We're making the best of whatever situation we may be in. And we just want to acknowledge that you're taking the time to be with us for this conference because you see value in that. And we're trying to grow as leaders. So I don't want you to, you know, feel like that you have to be, I don't want your full attention to always have to be on this. I want you to be learning and enjoying it, but at the same time, you know, go grab a snack or go use the restroom, or whatever you have to do throughout the conference. So that's just a little bit of a public service announcement. Outside of that, as I told you, we are specifically talking about blind spots and feedback today for this portion. So we've already kind of cultivated a little bit of what your purpose as a leader is. We've already began to cultivate what your vision, what your values are, and how you're aligning those with your actions, thanks to Daryl. And now we're going to start looking inward. We're going to start looking a little bit deeper and identifying maybe some of the things that impact how we view the world and how we interact with other people, because that's going to help us build better and deeper relationships with the people that we're working with. So we're more likely to be successful within our teams. So our 3 session objectives that we have today are: understand how to identify and eliminate our blind spots. We're going to learn how to build trust intentionally into relationships and the work environment, and understand the role of sharing information and receiving feedback and building deeper relationships. And one of the things we're going to talk about, and I'm going to lead with authenticity, and I'm going to be honest, you know, throughout the whole presentation. So, you know, like Emily and I are human beings, so we may make mistakes. I teach some courses at OU, and I always tell my students on the first day, whether you realize it or not, I'm always nervous on that first day coming in because I don't know the people that I'm working with yet. And even though I've been teaching for years and I've been in the professional realm for years, I still get nervous before public speaking. So, you know, you all, as you're kind of coming into your own and your different leadership roles and who you are as people, we never have to be perfect. We don't have to create this image of what our perfect us or our perfect leader is. I just want us to acknowledge that we just need to be our best selves. And once we identify that and learn that about ourselves, everything else comes right along with it. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this presentation.
Yeah, so just kind of what Jeremy said, we're going to be very authentic and very real. So we're going to use the Johari window, which it's a model and a really useful tool that you can use to improve your self-awareness and mutual understanding between individuals within a group. And then it can also be used to assess and improve a group's relationship with other groups. So if you don't know what the Johari window is right now, don't worry, we'll help you out. We'll teach it to you. So just really come in here and just be open to everything we have to say, and let's get started.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to use a metaphor, and it's kind of a modern spin on a metaphor or proverb that maybe you've heard before. But we as individuals are shaped by our upbringings, by our understanding of the world, by if you have spiritual or religious beliefs, if you have likes or interests, you know, the city where you're raised in. All of these go into shaping how we view the world and the lens that we look at the world in. So if you're walking into a situation, we can only see so much of what that situation really is, and it's all based off our personal perception. So to be successful, leaders can't be successful on their own. They need a strong team around them. They need a group of other diverse individuals with other backgrounds, other upbringings, other ways of looking at the world in order for that team to be truly successful and to also be able to meet the needs of the people that we're serving, or the people around, or the people that are around us. So the metaphor I like to give off is, and this is something that my professor in grad school taught us. He told me, if you walk into a dark room with a flashlight and you shine that light on something, we can only see a small portion of it. But it takes a collective group of people collaborating and working together in unison to all share their flashlights at once to truly see what's in front of them. So if you walk into a dark room and you shine a flashlight and you see like a rope or a tree trunk, that's all you know it as. You only know it from your perspective. But when we start working with other individuals, when we start combining how we view the world and getting to know and have a better understanding because of the people around us, and they share their perspective, we can see the whole picture. We can see it from multiple different areas to be successful. And so if you all shine your flashlights at once and you realize that there's an elephant in the room, first, you're probably going to ask, how the heck did this elephant get in this room? Because that's a very valid question to ask. And then second, at least you'll understand what's truly there and be able to come up with a strategy to deal with it. And then this is just a quote that I really enjoy. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So just let that kind of marinate in your mind a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about blind spots. So our blind spot creates a lot of problems. I mean, just think of like when you're driving and you have like your literal blind spot that's like right here. If you don't see that other car there, it's going to cause a lot of problems. And it's just the same as with it, like within yourself. So what we see clouds our judgment, and what we don't see biases our behaviors. So it's going to bias like the way you're driving or the way you're acting. So realizing what you don't know requires both self-discovery and external feedback. You can't just do it by yourself. You need somebody who's trusted and who you really like value their opinion to help you out. So your blind spots lie at the intersection of how you perceive yourself and how others perceive you. And that's exactly what the Johari window helps us to uncover. It was actually like a tool developed by psychologists, like two of them, Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham, and they're the ones that created it, so they get all the credit. But wrong perceptions can lead to misinterpretations. So your assessment of your behavior is limited by what you don't know. However, your blind spots are always visible to others. Even if I can't see that car that's like right back here, the person driving behind that car can see them. So it's the same thing with our personal blind spots.
And so there are actually 4 different types of blind spots that we're going to discuss. And I want you to think, as we're reading through these different descriptions, how maybe these manifest in your life right now, because all of us experience these. And it's not a negative, like this isn't a knock on any individual. This is perfect, not perfect. This is, a great example of just human nature of what we're dealing with on a daily basis. And the most important thing is to bring awareness to it, because once we're aware of a blind spot, we can then educate ourselves on how to adjust that behavior going forward. And if the blind spot is negatively impacting others around us, we can correct that behavior. Or maybe we have a blind spot to something that's beneficial to us. We can bring that more prevalently into our life. But the first of them is knowledge blindness. So this is a cognitive bias that occurs when people misrepresent their abilities compared to your peers. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is the inability to evaluate your own competence objectively. So think of maybe you're taking a test and you're trying to compete with a friend to see who can get a better score. Maybe it's a sports match or an interview. Like for myself, for example, just like Emily, I played basketball, and like back when I was in high school, and then I was on the club team in college. And all the time I would look at somebody on the opposing team and be like, oh, I'm totally better than them. I'm taller, I'm probably faster. And then quickly I'd get burned. They'd cross me over and they would score. So I would have this knowledge blindness where I'm misrepresenting my skills, thinking, and it can go either way, thinking you're more fabulous than you actually are, or maybe you're suffering from imposter syndrome where you're comparing yourself to a peer and you're evaluating yourself underneath. You're evaluating yourself as not quite as good as them. And in reality, that aspect doesn't matter, because we are our own unique human beings. So whether our skill set is better or worse than someone else doesn't matter. It's our approach to life and how we use that information that is what truly matters. And so this quote underneath is, knowledge blindness makes you feel overconfident or underconfident until somebody else proves you wrong. And then the next type of blind spot is beliefs blindness. And this is one that's very prevalent in society today. I'm sure you can think of lots of examples. But of the many types of faulty thinking, confirmation bias is the most deceiving. So your brain mostly registers the information and evidence that supports your core beliefs. If you think about global warming, so let's say, like global warming is a real impact in the world around us. If you have a beliefs blindness, you will often disregard or ignore any information that doesn't match what you personally believe in. So if you believe that chocolate chip cookies are good for you and they're extremely healthy, and if you have beliefs blindness, you refuse to accept any information that tries to discredit that. These beliefs will often taint the lens that we look at the world with, and they cloud everything we see around us. So it's important to eliminate this beliefs blindness to make sure that we can look at the world with an open lens uninfluenced by any of the inherent biases that we may have. That way we can truly understand and accept it for what it is, and not just what we believe it is based off of our upbringing, our cultures, or those other factors that play into it.
Okay, so the other two kinds of blind spots, we have emotional blindness and thoughts blindness. So emotional blindness is basically just the idea that emotions can cloud your perception, both what you feel and like being afraid of what you're feeling. So, I mean, just think about any situation where you got really frustrated and you acted out probably like a way that you shouldn't have. Like, I've definitely gotten frustrated with homework before and just been like, I'm just gonna quit it. I'm not gonna do it right now. Was that really the best decision? No, probably not. But it was because I was acting on my emotions and instead of like going through a process and figuring out what I need to do to figure this out. And it's really important, like you are not your emotions. I feel like sometimes that's a little bit hard for people to understand. So I'm gonna say it again. You are not your emotions. Your emotions make you focus on one aspect of reality, and you really need to get a little bit of everything to make logical decisions. And then there's also thoughts blindness. So there's nothing wrong with thinking. Thinking is great. The issue emerges when you look at or when you look from your thoughts. So they'll cloud your judgment. Like believing that you're always right is living in denial. And being judgmental about yourself plays the same deceiving effect. Your thoughts can eat you alive, and if you don't stop them from taking over, you can overestimate your abilities or only pay attention to the information that matches your beliefs. You become a victim of your blind spots as well. So, if your emotions or thoughts take over, you can't address the elephant in your life, and you don't know what you don't know.
All right, so we're going to do a quick activity. And so if you have a piece of paper and pencil in front of you, or if you want to open up a Google Doc or, any other way to kind of document your answers, this is completely confidential. So you don't have to share this information with anyone. This is just for you as an exercise as we try to identify what blind spots we may have. If you would like to share your examples in the chat, you are more than welcome to. As I said at the beginning of the conference, this is an open and inclusive space, so there will be no judgment based off what anybody says. We're all here to accept and support each other. So, but these questions are also very like these questions aren't super revealing or anything. It's just very general questions to help you start doing some self-reflection on maybe some potential blind spots or lenses that you have in your life that we need to work on or look at a little bit further. But the first question is, what are 5 words that you would use to describe yourself? So Daryl talked about like finding your values and stuff earlier, but what are just 5 different words? And they can be descriptive words, they can be adjectives. What are 5 words that you would use to describe yourself? And this one's kind of the easiest one. So if you want to throw this one in the chat, that would be super helpful. So what are 5 words you would use to describe yourself?
Okay, so our first one that came in is from Elijah. He says, empathetic, overly confident, strong, caring, and arrogant.
Perfect. Thank you, Elijah.
Erica said, empathetic, kind, timid, loving, and intelligent.
Perfect. And so some like examples for myself would also, words to describe myself: tall, I would say funny. You could, if you want to use like gender, like I'm a male, I'm married. I like pets. Like those are all different types of words that we can utilize. Emily, do you want to read a couple more examples?
Yeah. So Alana says motivated, caring, sensitive, passionate, and assertive. Ashley says hardworking, fun-loving, intentional, driven, and persistent. And then I'll pick one more. So Hussam said calm, brave, smart, enough, and caring.
Awesome. Thank you. And so the next question is, what is something you wished others knew about you? So we just talked about 5 words that we would use to describe ourselves. That's probably common knowledge that those closest to us know about ourselves. But what is something about yourself you wish others knew?
Alana says how funny she actually is. How goofy I am. Um, that someone has had a hard time accepting correction and admitting to mistakes. Um, some people they're scared to Shalnisha says, I'm scared to talk, but I try my best to push through it. Mustafa says, how much I care about people. Pamela says, I love, love, love working with children.
Mhm.
And then Erica says, how strong I actually am and how much she's overcame.
Perfect. And then just for the sake of time, this one you don't have to share, but I just want you to think about it. And it's, what is something that only you know about yourself that you haven't necessarily shared with other people? You don't have to post this. I just want you to think about it because it's relevant to some of the next slides. What is something that only you know about yourself? So I'll give you just a second to think about that before I ask the next question. What is something that only you know about yourself? And then the last question is, what is an unknown in your life? What is something that you don't know about yourself right now, that you don't know about your future, that nobody else can tell you either? Some examples will be, will I be married one day? Will I have kids? Examples may be what you're going to eat for dinner in 2 weeks. It might be something, do you have, is a future job promotion in your way? You know, think of what are specific unknowns that you would like to know that you just don't quite know yet, or that others don't know about you. Awesome. All right, just because we're running low on time for our session, I don't want to eat too much into the next one. We'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, so basically with all the questions that you just answered, you just made a Johari window. So like we said, it's one of the most useful tools for describing the creation of trust and human interaction. So basically it's a 4-paned window and it divides personal awareness into 4 types: open, hidden, blind, and unknown. And the lines dividing these 4 panes are like window shades, and they can move as interaction progresses. But we build trust by opening our personal shades to others so then we can become an open window. And so now we're kind of going to go into a little bit more detail about each window pane and talk about what they mean.
So the first one is the open window pane. So think about the question that I asked of words that you'd use to describe yourself. What is public knowledge that you know about yourself and others know about you? So some examples of this would be things that we know about ourselves, others that know about us. So it could be how tall we are, our hair, how our hairstyle is, our outfit that we're currently wearing, whether or not we have glasses. It's important to understand what is open knowledge to you and the teams that you're working in, because it influences how we're interpreting messages from you in that moment. The aim in any group is always should be to develop the open area for every person, because when we work together in this area, others are at their most effective and productive when the group is productive as well, and you have that open relationship and trust. This is why when you're working with the team, whether you are establishing this from the very beginning or if the team's been together for a little while, you want to make sure that you have a culture and an environment, encouraging people to be open and sharing information about themselves. Because the more open knowledge that we have about our employees or our staff members or our fellow leaders, the more successful we can be. We can be aware of individuals' strengths. We can be aware of individuals' fears. We can be aware of, how people prefer to receive feedback or how people prefer to be treated. So it's important to have, to do the team builders and to transfer the information early on when a team is coming together and being, collecting together for the first time, because it's going to help you be more successful in the long run, and it's going to provide you, sustained growth and sustained success. Established team members logically tend to have larger open areas than new team members. So new team members start with relatively small open areas because they have little knowledge as they're just joining the team. So if you're joining a staff for the first time, understand that there's been a lot of shared information that exists before you got there. And it's kind of up to the team that you're joining and yourself to make the initiative to obtain that information. And same thing, if you are on a team that's been around for a while and you're bringing somebody else in. So I'm sure when Emily was a freshman joining the Albion basketball team, the coach and the rest of the teammates that have been there a while had to really fill her in on all the different plays and schemes and everything else that were going on. That's an example of them looking at the Johari window and making it as open as possible for sustained success.
Okay, so the next window pane is the blind window pane. So these are things that we don't know about ourselves, but others do. So some examples kind of at like a really light level. If I had spinach in my teeth and didn't know it and I was just like talking up a storm, and obviously you guys would know that, but I don't. Otherwise, I probably would have picked it out. I hope I would have picked it out. And at a deeper level, do you talk too much at meetings, or do you have a real gift for making people feel comfortable, but you just don't know it? So by seeking or soliciting feedback from others, the aim should be to reduce this area and thereby increase the open area. So just asking people like, hey, like, how did I do during that meeting today? And then they can be like, oh, you kind of were talking a lot. And then that now becomes something that's in your open window instead of your blind window. So this blind area could also be referred to as ignorance about oneself or issues in which one is deluded. A blind area could also include issues that others are deliberately withholding from a person. So again, with the talking example, maybe I don't take feedback super well, and somebody says, "Yeah, Emily, you're kind of talking a lot today in the meeting," and I just completely take it the wrong way. They might like hold that back from me and not give me the feedback in order to move from my blind window pane to my open window pane.
So the next one is hidden. So this is when I asked you the question before, what is something that you know about yourself that others don't know? Or also the question, what is something that you wish people knew about you? This is information. So it's called privacy management theory. We have the ability to share and give others ownership of information that we ourselves obtain or have. So this is something that we know about ourselves that others don't quite know yet. It could be your belief in religion, political leanings, fears, dreams, your values. These are all things that we have the power, whether we choose to share it or not. By sharing this information, this is going to open the window a little bit more as we begin to find others, whether they're like-minded or maybe they have different points of view. It's really important to understand, because like I said, it's privacy management theory. You're holding on to these pieces of information that could potentially impact your team in different, whether it be positive or negative ways. And by operating with disclosure, you begin to build trust. Whether you're telling your team, I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here, I'm going to share a piece of information about myself that you don't quite know yet, but it's going to bring us closer. It's a great way to reduce those hidden areas in your window. And by reducing these hidden areas, it also reduces the potential for confusion, misunderstanding, and poor communication. The more communication and open channels of communication that you have within your team or organization, the greater chance that you have of eliminating misunderstandings or preventing conflict or overcoming conflict in the future. But it's also very natural for us as people with our private information and feelings to want them to remain hidden. Sometimes it's in our best interest to not share specific information, but that's completely up to us to control. You know, it takes a lot of vulnerability to share something private about ourselves just to open the window a little bit. But it's, you know, as we are managing our own information, it's up to us to decide, will it benefit me to share this information, or is this something I should personally hold on to? And only we ourselves have the answer to that question. And then the last little part, the extent to which an individual discloses personal feelings and information and the issues which are disclosed and to whom must always be your own discretion. So like I just said, only we can decide that for ourselves.
Okay, and the last window pane is unknown. So these are things that we don't know and you don't know either. So it's the area of mutual discovery, collaboration, and surprise for choose conclusions. And the future is in this window. So just kind of like the last question that Jeremy asked during the activity, like what are some things that nobody really knows about yourself? Like I don't know what I'm going to be eating for dinner in 2 weeks, and I'm sure that like none of my roommates know either. So This is what we will discover with one another and ourselves by interacting and building relationships. So a lot of the times this window is kind of a little bit hard to understand. You're like, okay, well, if I don't know it and other people don't know it, like how am I supposed to know that there's something in here? But some examples would be like an ability that is underestimated or untried through lack of opportunity, encouragement, confidence, or training. I could be like a great plane driver or pilot. I guess they're called pilots. Sorry. I could be a great pilot, but I've never gotten the opportunity to drive a plane. And I mean, I probably never will. And I've never gotten training for that. So, how am I supposed to know that I'm great at being a pilot, not a plane driver, a pilot? Um, and then some more examples are like an unknown illness. So, if you if I had like asthma, but I didn't know it, my doctor didn't know it, boom, it lands right into the unknown window pane. Um, but so when you let somebody in, like when you let somebody open this window on you, you'll create a mutual trust between yourself and that person. And again, you decide when, where, and how often you want to receive this feedback. And it's really important that you just make sure that there is that mutual trust there, and that when you do provide this feedback or when somebody gives it to you, it's not just like thrown on someone. It's not like, oh, hey, Jeremy, like, you're a great pilot. I mean, that was kind of a bad example, but it'd be kind of like shocking. I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, I have no experience with that. Or a lot of the things in the unknown window pane can be like a little bit sensitive. So just make sure that you don't like pounce on it. Make sure you ask for permission first, because if you don't, it could destroy the trust that you have between that you and that person. And it requires compassion and kindness.
So this is just a really helpful graphic on how we can open the window. And it kind of shows everything we just discussed. If you look at area number 1, this is the open area. So once again, this is the area that's known to ourselves and others around us. So we can grow this area by providing feedback to other individuals, both about ourselves and to them, by experiencing shared discovery, whether it be through success or failure. Things will start popping up from the unknown area and become open because we're having that communication, talking about it and experiencing it collectively with our group, and through self-disclosure, whether it be through one-on-ones, through feedback sessions, talking with your supervisor, or disclosing information to close friends. If you want to grow your hidden area and eliminate kind of the unknown area, it's all about self-discovery. We find out new things about ourselves all the time. Maybe you try something new at a restaurant and you realize you'd never tried it before, and now it's something that you love. It's one of your favorite things. So we're always working in sharing these different flows of communication to kind of strengthen our open area and control our blind and hidden areas. But once again, there's some information that we know about ourselves that maybe we don't necessarily want to or are at the point in our lives that we want to share with others, and that's perfectly fine. But the big driver in all of this is communication and it's feedback. And that's what we're going to kind of wrap up this presentation with here in a second. And it's very specifically talking about the opportune ways to give and receive feedback.
Yeah, so just like Jeremy said, the last little bit's going to be about communication and feedback, but there are some drawbacks to getting and giving feedback. So some things are better not communicated. Say somebody's like super confident, like having a great day, and you're like, "Oh, your hair like looks a little weird." Like, why would you like that's just better not communicated. They're having a great day. I'm sure they're fine. Sometimes people may react negatively as well, and I know that we all know that person that you are like you have to tell them something, you're like, oh, I don't know how they're gonna take it. So the use of the Johari window should be linked with an activity to promote positive behavior or eliminate a negative one. It should always be used in a positive way. Don't use this to try and take others down. We need to build each other up and use this as a positive tool. And another drawback is that some people do take feedback offensively, and that can be a little bit difficult to maneuver, but it's still important to provide that feedback for them.
So feedback. I want you to think about this for a second. We're on our second to last slide here. How do you prefer to receive feedback? Have you ever asked yourself that question before? When I graduated with my undergrad from CMU, and then I started my first professional job in higher education, my supervisor asked me right up front, he goes, how do you prefer to receive feedback? And I never thought about that before. And when I talk about this topic with a lot of people, this is kind of a new concept to a lot of individuals. How do you prefer to receive feedback? Do you prefer to receive it in the moment? Do you prefer to receive it via email first so you can think about it and process it and understand your emotions a little bit to the feedback that's being given, so then you can address it in person later? So really think about, when you're joining a new organization or you're joining a team for the first time, how do you prefer to receive feedback? But it's also extremely critical to understand, how does your teammates also prefer to receive the feedback? It's kind of up to us as leaders to influence the others around us and cultivate an environment where feedback is welcomed and encouraged. Because as Emily said, you never know. There's never the perfect time to always give feedback or to give constructive feedback to individuals. And sometimes they may react positively and sometimes they may react poorly. So it's kind of about us using our emotional intelligence and emotional awareness of picking the right situation to provide feedback. And the best way to do that, or to understand the best time to do that, is just having that dialogue with your staff, your teammates, your friends very early on, and asking them, what situations are they the most open to receive this? And then it's really important for us, leaders in any situations or just friends and colleagues, to be vulnerable and open ourselves, and always encourage, like, hey, like, Emily and I work together. She's my graduate assistant. I'm her supervisor. But I told her I'm going to learn just as much from her as she'll learn from me. And I'm going to learn from the people that I teach and that I work with. At no point do I ever want her to feel uncomfortable that she can tell me if I'm doing something wrong, if I need, if I'm doing a behavior that's making others feel uncomfortable, or maybe if I just don't quite have a full understanding on something yet. So that's me kind of instilling a culture early on of opening the channels of feedback to go both directions.
So we do have 7 criteria for effective feedback, just to share with you guys and to consider next time you are receiving feedback or giving feedback to somebody else. So the feedback provider is credible in the eyes of the feedback recipient. I think that it's more powerful if I heard something about my job performance from Jeremy than if my mom said something to me. She doesn't really know exactly what I do, so I would like see it more credible if Jeremy told me compared to my mom. Um, the feedback provider is also trusted by the feedback recipient. The feedback is conveyed with good intentions. If Jeremy just comes up to me, he's like, "Hey, you really sucked in that Johari Window presentation we just did." Like, if you just like email me that right after this, I would not be very happy. But if like later he emailed me, he was like, "Hey, maybe like, do you want to work on your presentation skills with me later?" I'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, like that sounds great." And then he could provide me feedback in that way. The timing and circumstances of giving the feedback are also appropriate. um Sometimes it's not somebody's best day, and maybe you should just wait a little bit and then give them the feedback later if that feedback is appropriate to give later. um Feedback is given in an interactive manner. It should be a conversation. It shouldn't just be me telling Jeremy that he's doing something poorly. It should be like me communicating to Jeremy that I what I think, and then he can communicate back and tell me, "Oh, okay, so like what aspect? Like tell me more." It should be a conversation rather than a statement. The feedback message should be clear, and then the feedback should also be helpful to the recipient.
So as we wrap up and we turn it over to our next presentation, hopefully you were able to identify some potential blind spots that potentially impact ourselves and our relationships, encourage you to be open and vulnerable so we can build trust within your team. And hopefully you now know some better ways to establish feedback in your team and organizations so you can open up the window that allows you to positively connect with others. So now I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Austin to introduce our next guest speakers.